Stupid meddling kids.
Straight out of nowhere, Scooby-Doo meets Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's the 36th direct-to-video Scooby-Doo movie, one of numerous crossover events, and in my opinion, one of the best. Arguably, it is one of the best direct-to-video movies in the library. It's an unofficial rule of sorts that the more absurd the idea for a Scooby-Doo movie, the better they turn out to be. Catch me outside watching anything less than Legend of the Phantasaur. The crossovers, however, are a bit tougher to gauge quality-wise. I definitely get why the idea of putting these two together would sound vapid or unenthusiastic. Scooby-Doo and Courage have actually been pitched as a package deal since the latter's inception, but merely for the sake of hawking shorter promotions and such. Nothing on this scale has been thought of since, but now that it's here, I'm so glad they gave it a shot. Outside of the crossover draw of the film, the main cast is plunged into the depths of Kansas to study the strange occurrences going on. From giant cicadas to odd dinner parties at the mayor's house, there's an endless barrage of freaky stuff happening in nowhere. At least, more so than usual. So it's up to Mystery Inc. and the Nowhere crew to solve the mystery. Twofold, there's what you'd otherwise call a minor subplot between the two dogs tackling inner fear and the unknown and what it truly means to be brave. It is a soulful, spiritually poignant romp creating something great in the way endless ghouls and phantasms can't. I wanted to walk through it because I think it's not only just a great movie, but it serves as a good reminder of what we've been contending with literally all year. This goofy movie just literally double dog dared you to look at your daily struggle play differently, and I wanted to hammer home how impactful that really was. There are two scenes in the movie that serve as the primary pitch. One of them demystifies the name, and it's weird. Not like Courage grade weird, just weird like out of place. I will not spoil it, however. Enjoy finding it at the most inopportune time. The other one, in some timeline, I can imagine was being pitched as an animatic and sold the movie itself. It's so good. For context, the beginning of the film establishes this self-help app that Scooby and Shaggy have been using to combat fear, learning to step outside their comfort zones and manage what scares them most. By the time they actually meet Courage, the three of them sit down and use it again, and it tells them to rattle off a list of their most primal fears.
Share those feelings. Talk about what scares you the most. Your deepest, darkest fears.
The Mystery Inc. boys list off the typical spiders and space aliens and other stuff, and then they give Courage a chance to name some of his own. This was obviously framed as a chance to introduce some of his greatest hits, and predictably, he shapeshifts into some of those batshit crazy complicated villains of his run. Obviously, there's a bit of a disconnect in what they deal with, but Shaggy is able to respond in kind.
Like I totally don't understand a word you're saying, little pink dude, but I am feeling your fear.
Yeah, totally feeling it.
This scene serves two different functions, or arguably the same function on two different levels. For one, it's super gratifying to see the tiny little beanbag dog be validated for the dozens of wildly frightening capers he's forced to contend with. On a wider thematic scale, this admission and acceptance of Courage's horror comedy spectacle is a sight to behold. For many, it goes without saying that Scooby-Doo is kept on a pretty tight leash. The semiotics of the characters are tested with each new series, but the few big rules that they have are stuck with Scoob indefinitely. The main one being its divergence from hard supernatural elements in situations. The 1969 show was formed partially as a tool to help us cope with fears we don't understand and to look beyond the curtain more often. They've always had monsters and phantoms present, but they've never entertained it initially. It's been a very tenuous formula they've juggled up until the exceptions to the rule became the starring attraction. Of course, it all blends together for Scooby-Doo himself. In his mind, his fears are no more or less valid than Courage's, and while they're together, he's there to support him in that. It's clear that while they don't understand each other 100%, spiritually, they're connected at the hip. The widest and most emotional message the crossover hinges on. That being said, this is still a rocky attempt to blend two very different worlds together. Visually, Scooby-Doo movies tend to have a level of polish Courage didn't really possess, which is by no means to say that Courage is a sloppy-looking show, but stylistically its rougher elements is a long ways away from the smooth curves and shadows of the current Scoobyverse. As far as I know, the former is still traditionally animated to a degree, so the art style of the latter was translated with precision. In motion, both together vacillate between decent and erratic. In some shots, Courage gets from place to place with his signature staccato hobble of a walk. In other shots, he moves quite normally. The few jokes and wild takes made in the style of Courage are scarce but enjoyable. They added in a lot of familiar tracks and sound effects. The cues and transitions help cement the atmosphere, even if the structure is obviously quite different. There'd be a scene where they'd add in a track and edit it close to the style of the original, and then cut to the next scene where they're playing some royalty-free stock music or something while they look for clues. Scooby media tends to be pretty straightforward. The movies tend to go all out as far as art direction goes, but it's not often you get more experimental animation in and of itself. On the other hand, Courage had a very specific drive in its movement design to go along with the mood. Even simple gestures were peppered with what you could call a nowhere type of flair. You're not going to get any of that here. I mean, this is just a Scooby movie with Courage spice, so your mileage may vary. But to the crew's credit, they generally did a great job of integrating these characters. I love the way everyone mingles together, even outside of the specific connection between Scooby and Courage. This is a pretty wholesome setup. They peppered in quite a few moments where Muriel encourages and uplifts the Mystery Inc. gang, and it's such a sweet pocket of interaction. Her and Courage are voiced by their original voice actors, and the same energy is present. For Muriel's voice actor, it was basically her last role, or passing away a good 6 weeks before the movie dropped. It's legendary that after not touching this character for about a good 15 years, she still left us with such an excellent performance.
Hold the phone! There's a horrible, ugly monster driving that truck!
Caution Eustace, dear.
Cohesion present here is a pretty unusual synergy, especially for a movie the creator of Courage wasn't even involved in.
That's rough, buddy.
I think he found out around the same time we all did, which is an unfortunate deep cut if I've ever seen one. I wouldn't tout this as if it would fit in as another episode of Courage. It's not flawless, but it is a wonderful epilogue for the character itself. They've been trying to bring back Courage for a while now. There was even a period where Boomerang was looking to a prospective Courage pilot to make or break a reboot of sorts. This little guy is a lost soul through and through, in and out of the context of his own show. Widely loved and respected, but perpetually floating from place to place, looking for grounding. Perhaps the idea of Scooby-Doo resolving such a long saga sounds too gauche or fantastical, but the more you think about it, it seems like this was written in the stars. One element viewers may contend with is the ending. It's a centerpiece of the supernatural skeptic Scooby franchise to explain the intentions of the men behind the mask, or what strange phenomena created these spooky occurrences. The same applies to this movie featuring Courage, where the then-discovered catalyst of the weirdness happens to be a decent change. The idea of hand-waving the large and variable band of horror comedy baddies featured in Courage with just one entity will likely rub some people the wrong way, which is understandable. Comparing everything that happens there with what allegedly causes it is a big downgrade in suspense. I have a feeling that had this been an original run episode a la Bravo Doobie-Doo or something like that, it would have melded these two minds in a subtler, more creative fashion. Courage had a knack for that, even in the midst of some bigger, badder obstacles. Purists from either franchise will likely struggle to watch, but I think the emotional core of this story which is not usually as strong in Scooby-Doo fare, is the true resolution of the film. There's two musical sequences in the film that serve as bridge points for this arc. The first served to accompany the opening credits sequence, telling the cold open seeing our main protagonists get cornered by giant cicadas. It's a bit of whiplash, but it fits somehow, like a cue to a chase montage. It's an energetic yet comfy country number, subtly nudging the audience towards a more ravenous, adventurous viewpoint. Much of the sequence is spent throwing these two dogs around a menagerie of board games and attractions with no order or cohesion. It's emblematic of their struggle, and while taking a more showy and optimistic approach to it all, our heroes are still left flinging around for a chance to earn their win, whether in concert or in separate storylines. The second comes about an hour into the film, where the duo are left to dig for the source, so it is said. This one in tone is less direct, but is twice as energetic to compensate. It's a proper chase sequence, so it's a rousing beat. Courage and Scooby are scared out of their wits, and we're jamming along to this bop.
Yes, everywhere is nowhere before the somewhere comes, and the opposite of fear is fun.
In contrast to the bouncy tune telling you to keep getting involved in sticky situations, this one tells you to basically revel in the chaos. A bit on the nose, sure, but it's a very high energy sequence. The song is less an admission of fright and more a challenge of its presence. In the midst of their race to uncover the full mystery, they've gotten into the groove of nowhere shenanigans, even if they're still supernaturally spooked. What catalyzes this shift of sorts is a scene that sits in the middle of these two numbers. Shaggy, Scooby, and Courage are in a cornfield outside the house, watching their friends being snapped up by more cicadas, when the former starts hyping everyone up as if they're about to embark on a big rescue mission. Now, what he's saying isn't that important, but this element in the story is a catalyzing moment for Courage. The layout of the story feels like one of the very few times his character wouldn't actually be tackling these conflicts alone. Nobody's presence is revelatory on its own, but these hefty ideas and themes being thrown around are being communicated differently to the beanbag dog now that he has processing partners. He's no longer an island, and within the illuminating beacon of support that he now has, the presumed absence of fear becomes demystified pretty quickly when he doesn't have to focus on the absence of friends.
Courage! 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 Courage!
Courage! That's me! Courage!
The 3 minutes he gets to kick ass and take names never is absolutely incredible. Not because it goes beyond his current level of skill or ability, but because his personal journey was a great mirror into more realistic struggles. The last 18 months or so have been an isolating and magnifying experience for everyone. It's not exactly sunshine and rainbows at this point, but many would say we're in a better spot now than when we started. It's not hard to feel completely cloistered off from folks who normally see and hear every day. In some aspects, it's an easier day. In others, the existential dread of addressing days or even hours you're swiftly losing track of without anyone to talk to is horrifying. Let alone if you're caught in the crossfire of the major issues we have been facing. This film doesn't repair fractured relationships on a whim or anything, but I think it helped ground our understanding of adversity and how fear and power coalesce and bounce off each other. It's endearing, it's empowering, maybe even informative. There's plenty of kids that don't know of Courage, but probably could learn a lot from his credo. I think it helps a lot to know who you really are when facing these types of things. And these are some of the reasons why I think Straight Outta Nowhere is very much a 2021 film. Having two of the most perpetually fearful cartoon dogs tackle adversity in a much different direction is an unorthodox way of handling all this. In many ways, their adventures stand in for circumstances way bigger and far beyond our control. And of course, the past year and a half has been a life or death struggle for many, many people. Anyone could likely relate to a lot of either of their run. But giving Courage the chance to shine in this very specific way during the climax was a beautiful dovetail off of everything the movie built up. It's a flawed but soulful feature. The story is not drawing in and earning praise, it's the character interaction and really earnest conversations that make you feel back at home, and even in uncharted territory, you get that cozy feeling. Even as a weirdly good mix, though, I don't know if we could really say it came straight out of nowhere, could we?
Well, good night, folks. Bye.
Hold on. It's just one more thing. I, as of today, have a Patreon. It's been a bit of a long time coming, but I think now is finally the time. If you enjoyed this video, or me, or any of the topics I cover, go and check it out. Link is in the description.